Welcome back to A Fresh Story, the podcast where we have conversations about brave decisions to start over again. I'm Olivia.
And I'm Jenny, and we're so glad you're here today.
We are here today with a very exciting pair of sisters that we are just thrilled about. Both of you are such bright lights, and Ashley's been on the show before, and I'm a huge fan of Ashley. And then Alexa, which you don't go by Alexa. Can I just double check? What do you go by?
Oh my gosh, I go by so many different things. My sister calls me Kitty.
Kitty, okay. I want to talk about we have a lot of nicknames too, so I get it.
You guys, I'm so sorry.
No,
I have to go get my dog really quickly.
Go. We'll talk to Alexa. So let's get into it about the nicknames. So where did all the nicknames come from, Alexa? So do you go by Alexa, but then
yeah. You can definitely call me Alexa. I go by anything. I'm used to 10 different names at this point. It actually is kind of a weird story. I've always just loved cats. And so when I was younger, we had tons of cats. It's such a lame story. And yeah, I basically wanted to be a cat. I loved cats so much. And so my family started calling me Allie Cat.
Very cute.
Then that's where Allie came from, and Kitty, and it's just always been my nickname ever since.
I love that. When I reached out, go ahead, Jenny.
Oh, sorry. What's the age difference between you guys?
9 years.
9 years. Okay.
So I'm sure she had the consciousness at this point to be like, my sister is very weird.
I think
but she just went with it.
I think wanting to be an animal is a very normal rite of passage for a little girl, as I remember it.
I never wanted to be an animal.
Was it? She's not visiting. She was a cat for a little while, and then when she was probably around 8 or 9, she had a friend who acted like a squirrel a lot, so they were squirrel friends.
I love it.
I would disclose this information.
Well, that's what happens when you get your sister on a podcast.
I was going to ask, Alexa said she responds to many names, and I was going to say, do you respond to Ashley? Because I do respond to Olivia. When people say Olivia out in public, I turn around still. But the age difference might be a little much for that. Yeah. I don't even think no one really calls me Ashley.
Yeah. There's a couple of different nicknames too. Okay. Ash, Nicole, Sissy. There's so many.
We do
Sissy.
call
each other family.
Yeah, we are too. But the most important question though, what is your aunt name?
Oh, so I wanted it to be, what was it? Aunt Kitty.
Yeah.
Yeah. But obviously Penny cannot say that yet. So the only thing she could mutter was TT. So as of right now, I'm TT.
TT. So I was desperate to be Tati because when I was little, my mom used to call me Tati Frowsy because she said that I was a little mouse that was named Tati Frowsy. I don't know where that came from. And so I was I want to be Tati. And these kids, it was not a they could or couldn't say it kind of thing. I was nobody call me Jenny around them. Nobody call me Jenny around Weston, who's my older nephew. Everybody called me Tati. Somehow I became Nen Nen, and I don't know how.
Nen Nen.
I don't know who the traitor is, but I'm Nen Nen now.
That's our mom wanted to be named Yaya.
Yeah.
We're not Greek or anything. I don't know why she wanted to be called Yaya. And now her name is Pootie. So
I love that.
That's what you get. Our mom wanted to be Grana because she thought it sounded Scottish, which we're not. But then I moved to Scotland, so I guess she kind of got her way.
They used to call her Goggy. Goggy. Yeah. He called her Goggy.
Pootie is good,
thrilled. Grandma. Great. I don't know. We're thrilled to have you both here, and both of you are doing such beautiful things. And I wanted to say, I met Ashley through her beautiful episode about CJ, and then Alexa, Kitty, Allie, we'll call you, reached out with such a beautiful message to say thank you for talking about my nephew and putting his name in the world. And then when we were deciding to do this sibling season, which we were really excited about, we were we have to talk to Ashley and Alexa. Yeah. So thank you for taking the time. I know you're both very busy. So I want to jump into it, and we're going to go older sister first. So Ashley, can you introduce Alexa to everybody?
Yeah. So her name is Alexa Dorian Spivey.
and I picked out that name. She was supposed to be a boy, and she surprised us at the last minute by being a girl. So I literally just picked like 2 names out of a book. We knew we wanted like an A name. I love Dorian. Like, I think it's such a beautiful, I love it now, you know. At the time it was kind of just like, not a joke, but just something we picked very quickly. Whenever my mom told me she was pregnant with my sister, I punched her in the stomach and ran away because I really did not want a sibling. I had been an only child for 9 years. Like, I didn't want a sibling. But when she was born, my first words to my mom were, "She's so beautiful." And I really feel like that age gap helped us be closer because I was never jealous of my time my parents were spending with her because I could help out a lot, you know? But Allie is the most caring, smartest, most empathetic, driven person you'll ever meet. She can be very opinionated and moody, but I love her.
What is her astrological sign?
Gemini.
Gemini, yeah.
Gemini. Okay.
She's a true Gemini.
Which I will make sure to say yours when I introduce you.
So I went through one.
That's so funny. So I know you kind of work together a little bit sometimes. So what does Alexa do for a job?
So what Allie does, I would say she's more of a content creator than I am. She's really great at producing videos that people want to watch or content that people want to watch. That's like my least favorite thing to do. And I feel like I'm like forced into this role. So Allie helps me with all of the stuff I really don't like doing, like doing these videos, editing the content, helping me come up with the videos. She is the creative force between any sort of sponsored content you see on my account. And she's so great at it. I'm endlessly proud of her. I would not be able to do this without her. So.
And I love this. And can I just say, like, both of you are so beautiful. Like, you're both like beautiful energies, beautiful people. Like, you like, and it's funny. Together, I can see that your sisters, like, separately, we get this a lot too. People would never see it, but now that I like have you together on top there, I can see like you have similar facial features, but different, but similar. I love it. And Alexa, who is Ashley?
Well, first of all, before I forget, she is a Scorpio. Gemini and a Scorpio. My mom really won the lottery with that one. But no, she's my incredible older sister, and she's the creator of Spivey's book club, Spivey's cookbook club. And she's such a powerful advocate for so many things, but notably stillbirth legislation, paid family leave. She's a voice during different political events to try to get people registered to vote and educated about the platform and the candidates. And she just is one of the most resilient and powerful and intelligent people I've ever met in my life. And I'm very lucky that she happens to be my sister.
I love that. Now, both of you are very driven humans. Where did that come from? Because both of you are ambitious women.
I think our mom. Wouldn't you say, Kitty?
I would say, yeah, half and half, or maybe even 75-20. I think our dad was very opinionated, and he was also very passionate about politics. He was also passionate about humor. So he really instilled those things into us. But our mom oh my gosh, another just incredible female icon in our lives. And she's so powerful, driven, motivated. She's a Taurus, so when she puts her mind to something, she does it. So yeah, I think she just instilled all of that in us.
No,
I love that.
There's literally nothing our mom like can't do. Like whenever I had to do projects in school, like if the project was build a shed out in your backyard, like my mom could do it. Like there is a literal shed in our background or oh my gosh, in our backyard of our home that she built. She built furniture. She's an awesome painter and she can draw anything. She can sew clothes. She can make any type of food you can think of and it's delicious. I don't know how her mind works, but she can do anything. Like she went back to school in her 40s to be a radiology tech. She didn't finish college because she got pregnant with me. And when her and my dad split up, she wanted to, create a better life for Kitty. So she was like, I'm going back to school at 40. And she did it. And she's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I love that. So take us back. So where did you guys grow up?
We grew up, or at least Allie grew up there for a little bit of her life. I grew up a majority of my life in this small town called Ellerbe, North Carolina. It has about 900 people. Wow. One stoplight, if you could even call it a stoplight. I feel like it's more like a flashing light.
Yeah.
It's so tiny. Its claim to fame is that Andre the Giant had a ranch there. Like he's the most famous person to ever.
And you're from there. You're pretty famous, Ashley.
I'm from there. I don't know if they claim me anymore, but yeah, it was a very small town. Our dad, his grandparents grew up there. So he thought for some reason it would be a great place to raise kids. And while we did have like a wonderful childhood, I don't know if like I would ever raise my kids there, but like we met a lot of beautiful people there. I still have some friends who live back there. Yeah. What do you want to say about it, Kenny?
Yeah, I mean, it was very much like a very small town. We had very thick country accents, which I've obviously lost mine. My sister still slightly has hers, but our fun things that we would do was have campfires, go fishing, ride on ATVs. It was like go to the local Peach Pit ice cream parlor. It was like a very simple, quiet life. And so it's just hilarious that we ended up in New York and LA.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
How old were you both when you left that town?
My sister was 18. She graduated high school and I was 9.
9.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where did you go?
Coincide with the year that my parents got divorced.
Okay. So I was going to ask that. So your parents got divorced before your father passed away?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
They split up my senior year. So one little part of that is that like my mom moved out of that town with my sister in like September of 2002, Kitty. And yeah, I lived with my dad for a little while and he just became like severely depressed. And he was kind of like, I'm going to leave. If I leave, maybe your mom will come back. And she couldn't, obviously, because she lived in a different place with my sister. So I moved in with my boyfriend at the time's grandma. So I haven't lived in Ellerbe really since halfway through my senior year of high school.
So how did you guys keep up your relationship? Like I know, like when I went to college first, Jenny and I had to really build a new type of relationship, right? We had gone through our parents' divorce and all these things. And then we had to figure out, back then, this was before texting and all that stuff, right? So we had to figure out a phone relationship. So what was that like? Because there is an age difference between there. So how did you keep up your relationship when you were living separately?
Well, I still remember my parents got in like this really big fight one night. And I think that was kind of the final decision for them to both leave. Yeah. And I remember picking up the landline phone and calling my sister. So I know that there was closeness there. Like I felt like she was someone that I could run to. And actually, side note, I just got back all this digitized VHS footage from all of our childhood. And you could tell I was obsessed with my sister. So I know we were close, but when she went off to college, I just remember her leaving me notes around my dad's house that I would receive, just her telling me that she loves me and everything's going to be okay. And she made a conscious effort, like during spring break or Christmas, to always come home and see me during like the holidays. So she always put in the work and never made me feel like we were far apart.
Oh, I love that.
It makes me cry.
I know.
So
I'm already crying again.
Yeah, I'm trying not to. Yes, 9 years is a big gap, but it's obviously gets smaller as you get older. When do you feel like that gap started sort of narrowing and you could be more like peers and colleagues and friends in that capacity?
It's funny because I don't even know if it got to a certain point. I've always said I don't really remember that my sister and I have a 9-year age gap because she matures me and I keep her young in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's always felt like an even playing field in terms of our age. And so even when I was 13, not that she would dumb down the conversation, but she would never make me feel like, oh my God, you're so young. This conversation is boring. We could always have an incredible conversation and she would let me feel included always. So, I mean, maybe around college is when I was finally like, okay, maybe I'm more mature now and she can like handle me a little bit better.
I think one thing too is that obviously like our parents' divorce was very traumatic and my older sister vibe always like kicks in, right? Where I just want to protect her. And so even in college, I wanted to keep things as normal as possible. So I kind of thought when I went off to school, I would never come back home, right? Like I wanted to get out. I wanted to like be this like really popular person on campus and whatever. And when I got there, all I wanted to do was like go back and spend time with my sister. So a lot of weekends I did come home to like, I don't know, give her that stability that I knew like my parents weren't giving her. And that became really important later when my dad died because not only,
Hey, you're in the right place for it.
not only did she have to deal with like that trauma of the divorce, but then to like lose my dad so soon.
Yeah.
Just it really affected me and I wanted to protect her from just all the bad things that come out of something like a divorce, come out of something like a death, because that stuff fucks you up. You know?
It does.
And so much of this wasn't her fault. And I just wanted to make her as normal as possible.
We try as the older sisters. We try. It never works out the way we think, but we try. So so take us back to that. So when did your father pass away? What was that situation?
So just to reiterate a timeline. So they got divorced when I was 9. My mom got remarried when I was 14. And so my mom and I moved out of my grandma's house and we moved to a new city in North Carolina with my stepdad. And so I had just started a new school there in September. Come November, 2 months later, I had a boyfriend, which that was
of course you did,
but
I'm not surprised.
Well, you're beautiful.
I already had a boyfriend.
You're a cute girl. I mean,
he was like my only friend, so we spent all our time together. And I was getting ready to go over to his house, and I had my feet in my sink, and I was on the counter doing my makeup, and I get a phone call from my grandma, my dad's mom. And she basically tells me that my dad is in the hospital. They think he had a stroke and we need to get there ASAP. As a 15-year-old and the first line of contact for that information, I was extremely overwhelmed. My sister had just moved to New York. My parents were out running some errands. So I was alone. And I think I immediately went into a state of shock, but I remember calling my mom. I don't even know if I called my sister. Maybe my mom called my sister.
Yep.
But it was just this quick series of events where, because he was in a hospital about an hour and a half away. So it was just grabbing stuff, getting in the car, and racing an hour and a half to even figure out what had happened to my dad. So here I go, about to hang out with my boyfriend at 15 years old, to quickly getting to an ICU care unit in Fayetteville, North Carolina, to see my dad in just an insane state. So yeah, it was really traumatizing. I don't know what your perspective of it was, Sissy.
Yeah. My sister and I have like very different relationships with my dad at that point. Like, I feel like, I had a lot of anger towards my dad, at this point. And I had just moved to New York from North Carolina, I think in August. And before I left, he had this like new girlfriend, and he was like spending time with her, and he didn't make time to see me before I left. And I was super broke when I first moved to New York. So the last I had talked to my dad, we were talking about, Kitty, how do you never cry? We were talking about Obama just winning the presidency, and my dad was happy. Like, one thing you have to know about him is he like really struggled after my mom and him divorced, and he was unhappy a lot. And like, as an older sibling, sometimes I just felt like that was hard to deal with when I'm trying to like move on, start new things, move to a different city, have a new life. And my dad's like sad all the time, and like sometimes it's just really hard to talk to. But the last conversation I had with him was really nice. He was really happy. And I was like, well, I'll see you at Thanksgiving. Like, and that was our plan. We were going to see each other at Thanksgiving. And literally a week later, he had this brain aneurysm. And my mom called me. I was like out at Barnes and Noble with the kid I was nannying at the time. And when I like say, this sounds very dramatic, but I literally like just like fell on the floor, because my mom, who was a radiology tech at that time, I don't know if she told Kitty this, but she was like, Ash, like his brain looks like it's split in two. Like, you need to come home right now. And I was so like broke at the time. I didn't know how I was like going to get home. My boyfriend at that time like paid for me to take the first flight out. I was like crying so hard on the plane that the person who sat next to me like just got up and left. I think he was like, I can't deal with this girl. Like, what's wrong with me?
Oh,
No, I know. I'll never forget.
That's what was so hard about the situation, is that we weren't with our dad. He was, living separately from us. So she was an hour and a half flight away. I was an hour and a half drive away. So just the experience of not even being able to be with him immediately or know his condition was the first of a traumatizing series of events.
Yeah. And it's interesting because we had a similar situation with our parents are also divorced, and our dad had a stroke also, and he's alive now. But my point is that when you're dealing with divorced parents and one of them gets very sick, your other parent has to kind of like put aside their issues, right? To like step in for the kids. So I'm assuming, so Alexa, you were not old enough to drive yourself, right? So did your mom and stepdad take you?
So I always, I kind of felt very jaded towards my stepdad up until this point, and he knows this story. But at one point, my mom had the phone on speakerphone, and my aunt said, April, my mom, you need to get here now. They don't think he's going to make it through the night, not knowing that I was hearing that on the other line. And I just start crying, and I turn and I look at my stepdad, and he is a puddle of tears. And he's like, let's go, baby girl. Let's bring you to your dad. And I was like, from that moment forward, I was like, I love this man. He actually genuinely cares about me. My mom was stone cold. My stepdad was the puddle of tears.
We had a
It's
similar
interesting.
experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, not to make this about us, but when my dad had his stroke, I was working and mostly living in the city, and we were from Long Island. So it was like an hour and a half away. I happened to be on Long Island that night. My dad, who lives in the city, happened to be on Long Island that night. And he was with our little sister. We have a sister who's 25. I'm 36. She was young. She was like 10.
This was 10 years ago. So she was 15,
she was
14,
like maybe
15.
10, 13. She was like closer to how old you were. And my dad had the stroke in front of her. And she was the one that called us and was like, Daddy had a stroke. Like, so we all happened to be very weirdly within about 5 minutes of the hospital. But the two ex-wives, my dad's two ex-wives and my stepfather all showed up at the hospital. And it was like this team of people. And it's like, it does make you feel much closer to that other father, because he was like, okay, let's get in the car. Let's like, because they moved his hospital and stuff like that. And he was the one that was like, let's go, and I very much understand how that was
beautiful story. Yeah. So what was it like, Ashley, if you remember, arriving and seeing Alexa in that moment? Like,
I don't remember, so I'm curious to hear. I think trauma is so interesting how it can just erase your memory sometimes.
So whenever I got to the hospital, the Donate Life team met me, and I had to make all the decisions for my dad because him and my mom were no longer married, and no one prepped me for that yet. So basically, whenever they meet me at the door, they're like, hey, just let you know, your dad is a wonderful candidate for organ donation, and he can save up to 7 lives. We just want to start that conversation with you, but please, go see your family first. And at the time, my brain was just like, what? And even though my mom had already told me that, I knew them meeting me at the door meant that he was gone. Yeah. Kitty, I think the first time I saw you, you had some friends with you. Yeah.
And this is something we discussed recently.
Yeah. At the time, I think I was like kind of annoyed because I was just like, what are these people who don't know my dad like doing here? But looking back, like at that time, that's who she was really close with, and that was her support system. And I totally get that. Like, I was just being a griefy little asshole.
I also didn't, because he was in the city that I had just moved from. So all my close friends who I hadn't seen in months, I was like, come to the hospital. My dad's going to be fine. I didn't think he was actually going to die. I was like, it's fine. Just come and hang out with me. He'll be better soon. And they knew my dad. So I was like, he'd love your company, whatever. I didn't realize the gravity.
Well, you had two completely perspectives, right? Yeah.
I was 15. Exactly.
You're 15. That's what a 15-year-old thinks. Of course my dad's going to live. I'm near my friends. I miss them. My life is my friends, right? Like, come hang out. And
it's the first stage of grief. It's denial. You're like, oh, okay. Yeah, this isn't happening.
Yeah. So go ahead,
I'm just
Jenny.
thinking, sorry, Ashley, about the fact that you were like the next of kin chap to make those decisions. That's a lot. And you were what, like 24?
I was 24 at the time. I had just turned 24. And like I said, like I had just moved to New York, and I was kind of like, this is the Fresh Starts podcast. Like that was my fresh start. I was literally trying to get away from like everything bad that had ever happened. And I'm like, I'm sorry to say this, but like my first thought whenever my mom called me to let me know this about my dad is I was like, God damn it, Dad. Like, seriously?
Pulling me back.
Like, you can't even just let me move to a new place without like any new trauma.
He was dramatic.
He leaned into the humor. So that is some dark irony and comedy there.
Yeah.
No, he would appreciate that. But yeah, I was so mad at him. And the story Allie just told about my stepdad, what was really interesting to see during that time is I was so young, but everyone who was older than me in our family really was not interested in like helping me out. They were kind of just like, yeah, you can make the decision about organ donation. You can make the decision about cremation. No one wanted to make those decisions unless they were kind of like fighting me on something. I knew my dad's wishes when it came to death, and people didn't want to, pull the plug. People didn't want him to be cremated. I don't think anyone fought me on the organ donation, but one thing like people don't tell you, and the only reason I'm mentioning this is because I just had this whole thing on my Instagram about like misconceptions that people really believe. And like a big one is about organ donation and how like people won't try to save your life if you're an organ donor.
Yeah.
So whenever I brought up to them, I was like, so there's no way he's going to come back from this. And they explained to me that for them to even consider organ donation, there has to be brain death. And so I had to watch them perform a series of tests to confirm brain death. And I mean, it's just one of like the worst things you can really watch, Yeah. It was just that whole process. Like, I think I've tried to shut a lot of it out, but it was incredibly traumatic. And I cannot believe that people just let me make all those decisions.
Even going off what she said earlier, like, why don't you cry? I feel like I cried so much in those few days at the hospital that it honestly changed the trajectory of like who I was as a person. And it almost made me numb to things. So I am someone in my family who doesn't cry as much as everyone else. And I always think back to the hospital and how I feel like I cried out all my tears I ever had. It's just such a like surreal experience.
Yeah.
I feel like both of you were at such prime ages for the thing that happened to you to really affect you. Like to lose your dad at 15 and then to lose your dad at 24 and also be the one who's making those decisions right when you're starting out your life and learning how to make a decision and not, all those things. Like it really was like a 1-2 punch for both of you. I mean, obviously losing your dad at any age is going to change the trajectory of your life, but you were both really like, raw and like vulnerable to that change.
And our brains were still so malleable in so many different ways.
Exactly.
And I think about that a lot, like struggles that I've had with mental health compared to some of my other friends who have never experienced loss or trauma.
Yeah.
I really think it changes your brain in a lot of ways. And sometimes I'm resentful because I'm like, they're having such a normal lived experience. And I feel like I have, anxiety and depression and all these things that have stemmed from losing my dad. And it's just changed me in so many ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to take a second, though, to honor both of you because both of you have been through so much. And I want to talk about CJ before we go because he's a big part of the story. And then we'll get into some fun stuff also. But both of you use your platforms to keep honoring all of these big, brave life decisions and to honor the pain you've been through and to talk about it. And so that nobody else feels alone. Jenny and I talk a lot about how we had each other. And so now we don't want anybody else to feel alone. And you guys do exactly the same thing, right? You are both using your platforms in such a beautiful way to make sure nobody else feels what you had to feel, but be alone at the same time. And so even though Alexa, you've gone through all that stuff and I love your content. I watch you all the time. It's so refreshing to be like, yeah, I'm feeling fucking depressed today. But you know what? She was talking about that too. And she had her latte and her biscuit in bed or whatever you had the other day that I was watching. And I was like, and you have a partner that loves you and like all of these things. And it's so amazing. And like, I mean, Ashley knows because I adore her and I tell her all the time that she's doing amazing things and she's at the beginning of her journey. But, it's so powerful to see sisters who took your pain and have morphed it into this beautiful way that you're changing the world and helping people. And I just want to honor that before we go on because I know that you know what you're doing, but sometimes it's hard to see that other people see it and we see it. We really see it.
Thank you so much for that.
we've talked to Ashley about CJ, and you can go back and listen to the whole episode about CJ. But I want to talk about this from Alexa's perspective a little bit. So, when CJ passed, Alexa, where were you? What was going on in your life during that time? And I know you were one of the first people. It was during the pandemic, right? And you were one of the first people to come support your sister. So what was that picture like?
It's crazy to recount it after talking about what happened with my dad, because there's so many parallels now that I'm realizing it. So I lived in LA at that point, and my partner that I'm still with, Kendall, he was on his way over to hang out with me. And my mom calls me, and it's a typical conversation, nothing out of the norm. And then I hear the tone in her voice change. And she's like, I have to tell you something. I already have this really weird relationship with phone calls ever since my grandma called me. So when I get a phone call from my mom and my sister, there's always just a hint of terror when I pick up the phone. Yeah. So when I heard her tone change, I was like, oh God, it's happening again. She basically proceeded to tell me that my sister lost CJ. When you get news like that, your brain, the change that it makes into a state of like fight or flight is so interesting to experience. And I immediately was just like, what do I do? Like, is this really happening? Did she just say that? Wait, what was I doing? Your brain does so many weird things. And I just remember being like, oh my God, I'm going to have to go through that experience of grief again. And I hate being back here. It's such a triggering thing. And so anyway, when my boyfriend came, I just fell into his arms and he let me cry for hours and hours. And at one point I called my sister. I think it was maybe the next day after she had given birth to CJ. And I was like, do you want me to come? Like, I will come if you want me to come. And she was such a shell of herself that she was giving me like here and there answers. Like, you can come if you want to come, Kitty, whatever. And my boyfriend looked at me and he was like, just buy the plane ticket. You need to go. And so I was like, you're right. So I bought the plane ticket, and I had a very demanding job at the time. I was a flight attendant that was on call 24/7 for a private company. And they already knew I had time off for when CJ was going to be born. So they were like, go. If this is what happened, go. And they allowed me to take 2 weeks off, and I rushed to New York to be with my sister.
And what was that like, coming in and having to kind of step into the big sister role there and take over?
I'm remembering like two different things. One, I immediately stepped into gear, like a familiar thing that I do. And I think it's since my dad passed away, because when he passed, my grandma was so hysterical that I almost took on this role of being calm and collected and kind of like a doer. I try to like maintain the peace for people. So I try not to show emotion. So that's immediately something that I was doing. But it was hard because one of the first things I remember is walking into their apartment and seeing their room, which is now Penny's room, and looking in, and they had CJ's stroller by the front door, and they had so many things that were about to go into his nursery sitting in his nursery. And just seeing that made it like 100 times more real, and like the lost chance of happiness. It was such a heavy feeling. And then just seeing my sister, my sister is my best friend in the world. And so not being able to take away that pain was heartbreaking.
What is your relationship, Alexa, with CJ today? Like, in terms of how you spend time with him in the world?
It's very similar to how I feel about my dad. When I go to New York, I still try to say hi to CJ, and we still celebrate his milestones, and I talk to him, and we tell Penny that she has a brother, and he's still very much around in so many different ways.
I love that. And what was it like holding Penny for the first time?
Well, it was incredible because my sister was passed out from her C-section. And, when I first saw my sister, she was shaking so much that I thought she was having a seizure from the cesarean shakes or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I was like, is she good? And they were like, here's your niece. And I was like, oh my God, is my sister okay though? So it was like dueling emotions. But I just remember how small Penny was. And the nurse said, soak it up. These are the best moments. Like, here she is finally. And I had written a poem to her that's hanging up in her room. I had written it about like 2 to 3 months prior about her birth and what it would feel like with her coming into the world. And this may actually get me choked up. It was so much better than I could have even written.
Yeah. Yeah. And Ashley, what is it? I mean, I know because I'm a big sister. I'm the one with the kids too. What is it like to see your sister become this important person in Penny's life?
I mean, I feel very lucky because Allie did something so special for me. And like, she took time off her job. She took time off her life to come and help me raise Penny for the first 3 months of her life. And like, I can't tell y'all how like special that was to me because like, I haven't been able to live with my sister, since I was 18. And I feel like that probably like healed something in me.
Yeah.
That was broken for a long time. And just, I think this is my personal thing. And like, maybe this comes from being a nanny for so long, but the bigger your village is, like, the better it is for your kid. And having Allie there for Penny every day, like, I don't doubt that made Penny like the extremely happy baby that she is to this day. Penny has a lot of me in her, but she has a lot of Allie in her as well. And people tell me that all the time. They'll be like, I kind of see more of Allie and Penny than you. And like, I totally think that as well. Allie is a wonderful aunt. I couldn't wish for any better. And I know that if anything ever happens to me, that, Allie will take great care of her. So
Yeah, I understand the feeling. I do. Well, let's end on a happier note before we all go.
Wait, a crying check. How many of us are crying at
all
this
of
very
us. I
moment?
think all of us, except maybe like
I had a little
got a
tear
tear
for me.
Okay, she has
4 out of 4, baby.
I mean, Penny's adorable. I love watching when, because I obviously follow both of you, and it's fun to watch when you both post when you're together and you get to see the different perspectives. And I love that Alexa is such a great, and Jenny does this too for me, is taking pictures of Ashley and Penny together because, it's moms are not always in the picture. And so it's super fun to watch. If anybody's listening and doesn't follow both of them, go follow both girls because it's fun to watch the perspectives of Alexa watching Ashley be a mom and Ashley watching Alexa be an aunt. And I appreciate
aunt, like aunt to aunt, like it only gets better as they get bigger because you still get sleep, like you still get to sleep, and they are just more fun and they have more things to say and their personalities just come out. And it's fun too for me. I love being like, oh, that's like me and that's like you, to Olivia, like to identify the parts of them that are like your sister who you love so much. It's very exciting.
And my partner and I, we are most likely going to be child free for the rest of our lives. And so I always tell him, I'm like, Penny is going to be my girl for the rest of my life.
Before we go, a couple more questions. Ashley, what is one food Alexa could eat nonstop?
That's hard.
She has good tasting food. And I know from following her, she has exquisite taste in food.
I'm thinking like one in my head. You should know it.
Just like any sort of pasta.
I was going to say Harry's pizza.
Oh, I was going to say Harry's, but I was like, is that too like niche? Like, no, okay, yeah. I was going to say Harry's. Like, as soon as Allie lands, I'm always like, do you want to get Harry's?
Is that in the city? That's a New York City thing?
Yeah. It's like the flight attend, I would have to get crew meal for the pilots. And if they ever said, oh, on the way back from New York, maybe I want some pizza, I was like, I already know what I'm getting you, Harry's.
I don't know it. That's so funny. I'm going to look it up.
Me neither. Okay, Alexa, what could Ashley eat forever?
She really loves kielbasa and onions.
Okay.
You're just not so much.
No,
it's like you do. You made it the other night.
I haven't eaten it in a long time.
Well, this is a great time to plug.
How dare you talk about
what did you think she was going to say, Ashley?
I thought she was going to say hot dogs, but I guess it's like in that same vein, so that's fine.
Family.
I thought you were going to say one kind of sausage, but you said another kind of sausage, and that's crazy.
Well, I mean, this is a great time to plug your cookbook club, right? That you guys do together.
Yeah.
So I am horrible at cooking, and I order a lot of Postmates. And so at the beginning of the year, my sister was like, how about you join me for Spivey's cookbook club? You are also a Spivey. And so she invited me in to be half of Spivey's cookbook club in January. And it was so much fun. I love seeing everyone's recipes that they made because everyone kind of added their own twist. So yeah, we love doing that.
I love that. Okay. And last question, Alexa, if you could give anything to your sister, what would you give her in the whole entire world?
I think if I could just offer her the opportunity to never feel pain again, I would just want that for her so bad because she has had such a hard life and she still somehow remains this absolutely sweet and incredible person. And so if I could offer her that peace, that would probably be it. Yeah.
Aren't you so proud of her? I'm so proud of Ashley. I don't know her in person, and I'm so proud of her. Just she's an incredible force. Like, look at her.
She really is. I always tell people she's an enigma because before she had Penny, it was even crazier. She would read 3 books a week, cook 7 recipes, do 7 workouts, watch 3 shows. I was like, how do you have the time and the discipline?
Yeah, she's a force. She's just I tell her all the time. She's at the beginning of her journey. She's going to change the world. She already has. Yeah. Okay, Ashley, now that you're over there crying, what would you if you could give anything to Alexa in the world, what would you give to her?
I think it's like in that same vein, but I just want her to always feel loved. Because I feel like one thing Allie has had some issues with is people either like not being as good of friends to her or family members not being like that great to her as well. And so I want nothing but like just like endless love for her, for no one to ever make her feel that way. And we were talking about this like earlier, but for us both, I would just like a boring life. For the rest of our lives, I just want nothing but like it just to be absolutely boring. Boring and happy.
I don't know if that's what the universe has in store for you, but I mean, all good, exciting things. How about that? We want all good, exciting things. So on that note, Alexa, what do you have coming up? Where can we find you?
Well, I'm trying to post more and more on my Instagram and my TikTok. My Instagram is just my name, Alexa Spivey. And then my TikTok is where I post a lot of my cats it's Alexa Dorian.
I love it. And Ashley, we all know where to find you, but you can remind everybody.
Well, I feel like we have some really exciting sister opportunities for you to watch both of us. We're both going to Miami in April, and then we're both going with our mom and Penny to Paris in May. So I hope people will follow along with me at Ashley Spivey. That's pretty much the only place I post. Don't go to my TikTok. It's embarrassing.
The four girls are going to Paris together.
Yeah.
That is going to be so fun.
This is kind of I'm sorry. Am I like going way over time?
No, you're not. You're fine.
I asked a question. I want to know.
Okay. This is a crazy story, but I have always wanted to take my mom to Paris. My mom has never been out of the country, and I've always just wanted to do something like really nice for her. Before I was born, she wanted to be an architect. And I just think she's going to fall in love with Paris and just think it's like the most beautiful place ever. So I had been saving up my money for a really long time to take her and my sis. And then when I got pregnant, I was like, oh, well, I'll just bring the baby, no issues there. But when my mom's 60th and my sister's 30th came around, just the funds were not there and we had to change up the plan. And I was depressed about it. I thought it was never, ever going to happen. And then like a month ago, I won Creator of the Year for NC Media, and they pay for 8 days, 7 nights in Paris at a hotel as well as 2 round trip tickets. And I just was like, what a wonderful gift from the universe. Like, it's like, they were kind of like, oh, you know what? We really fucked Ashley over a little bit.
All that.
That's the exciting good stuff, the exciting, interesting stuff. That's great. I love that. And I was actually going to say before, like, what comes up for me so much talking to you both is like, you are both such good people. And we truly believe, we talk about this a lot. When you're a good person and you put that good energy in the world to help other people, that Ashley does, and you, Alexa, does, you both do it like all the time, right? That we always say you could be a creator that just like creates, or you could be a creator that helps people. And both of you do that. The energy comes back. So I'm not surprised that you got that, and you're an incredible manifester in all the best ways. So that's amazing. That's amazing.
I do have to say that if your mom loves architecture, and this is a bit for my own city, but a second trip, Edinburgh has such beautiful architecture.
Ooh.
Like, it is such a beautiful city, and it's small. So it's like, you don't need like 10 days to do it. You need like 7 days, and it's good for like, it's a good walking city. So that could be the next trip. I'm just saying, I think that the city does not get its fair due.
I tried going to Edinburgh for New Year's this year because I heard about their New Year's festival and how they do it right. And I was trying to plan to go. It didn't work out. But Kendall was like, why this place? And I was like, you are selling it short. It's a beautiful city.
It's amazing. It's so romantic. And if you ever find yourself over here, feel free to hit me up because I have a lot of good recommendations.
I definitely will.
Amazing. Well, we appreciate you both so much, and we appreciate your honesty and your authenticity. And, it takes a lot of work to be a human, like full stop, and then to be a human in the world and putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
And I'm just so appreciative of both of you in our world, and can't wait to see what you two do, because I just know there's a lot more coming from the Spivey sisters. So thank you for being you both.
No, thank you for having us on, and all the kind words. Like, what a nice little hype up session. I feel so happy right now.
I'm so glad. Thank you for listening to today's episode. A Fresh Story podcast is produced by Fresh Starts Registry, the first and only platform for everything you need to begin again, from home items to Hype Team and everything in between. You can learn more and read today's show notes at afreshstory.com.